Welcome to TVBS Meeting Room, where we tackle global issues with a view from Taiwan. I'm your host, Wenqi Yu. Today, we're pleased to have Andrew Yang, co-chair of the Forward Party, a candidate of the 2020 Democratic presidential primaries, and a candidate of the New York City Democratic mayoral primary. He's an entrepreneur and author of 3 books, including Forward, Notes on the Future of Our Democracy. Andrew is also a son of immigrants from Taiwan. Welcome, Andrew.
It's great to be here. 大家好。
大家好. Why did you start the Forward Party and recently enlisted a former New Jersey Republican Governor Christine Todd Whitman as your co-chair?
The American two-party system has been breaking down more and more, where now 50% of Americans regard themselves as independent, 62% say they want a third party. And the polarization is getting worse and worse, where almost half of Democrats regard Republicans as corrupt and a threat to the country. And Republicans feel the same way about Democrats. It's getting worse, not better. As someone who is raising Taiwanese American kids here in the States, you can feel that the energy is getting nastier and more negative. And so this dynamic can only be shifted if you have a positive unifying third-party movement that creates real choice in the American system and helps bring the temperature down by changing some of the structures that, frankly, right now are elevating the polarization in American life.
And how did you feel about the midterm election results? Did you see the polarization, or is it getting better? And over the weekend, we also just saw that Senator Warnock secure his seat representing Georgia, making the Senate actually a little bit better than 50-50. Now it's 51-49. So what did you think the message the American voters were really sending to Washington, D.C.?
Oh, I was encouraged by the midterm results. There were a number of extremists who denied the election that lost in various races. But one of the jokes I was sharing was that dodging a bullet is not a strategy. Where right now.
What does that mean? Dodging a bullet is not a strategy.
Well, so if you look at the margins in some of these races you're describing, you're talking about often maybe 1 percentage point in Arizona or less. In Nevada, it was less than 1%. And so you're getting by the hair's breadth, avoiding really nasty extremist candidates. And let's say the economic conditions were to worsen here in the U.S. Does anyone really have any confidence that that 1% might not have gone the other direction? So right now, the American political system is teetering at the edge. And what's required is for it to be modernized and upgraded to a more representative, dynamic, multi-party system. The problem is that the two-party system right now is enforced by a set of rules that advantage both incumbent parties. Members of Congress in the U.S. have a re-election rate of 94%, even though their approval rate of Congress overall is only 22%. Think about that massive divide. And that's why Americans seem like they're going so crazy, is that they look up and say, 3 out of 4 of us are unhappy, but we can't change anything.
Yeah, as you said, clearly most Americans are not happy with either political party. And your book actually points out some of the major challenges facing the U.S. right now, from, growing inequality, the feeling of exclusion of many groups in society, and a dysfunctional Washington, D.C., and to the role of social media in deepening social divide. Can you say more about the Forward Party solutions?
Oh, thank you so much for digging into my book. Now, the Forward Party is trying to solve the problems at the structural level. Our goal is not just to win an election. Our goal is to make it so that our elections actually elevate the right type of leader who wants to pass reasonable policies based on data and results. And the American way of life is declining nationwide, regardless of whether you're in a blue or red area, regardless of whether...
What does that mean when you say American life is declining?
Well, America is now 31st in the world at public education, infant mortality, life expectancy, clean air and clean water, and those numbers have been going down. Writ large, American incomes have more or less been stable or the same, while the cost of housing, education, and healthcare have all gone up and up. So that's why Americans seem so stressed and miserable. And this is true regardless of which party is in power. Maybe one party might be marginally better at addressing these issues, but that's why you see the anger rising in American life. And you either need a healthy system that can channel this energy and make real change, or you're going to see the entire system get overrun. That's what I mean when I say dodging a bullet is not a strategy, is that a lot of people didn't think that Trump could get elected in 2016. He, until it changes, is the favorite to win the Republican nomination in 2024.
Well, you talk about, the forward party is not about winning elections. And you haven't really, put forward any candidates, even the last elections, but the party endorsed quite a few candidates. Can you share kind of your strategy, why you're doing this way?
It's about navigating the rules that are meant to suppress third parties. So we're going to get recognized or be on the ballot in about 25 states over the course of the next 12 months. But until we're on the ballot, it's impossible to endorse a forward party candidate because you're not allowed to run on a forward party. So the way that the two-party system is enforced is essentially through a set of anti-competitive rules that are implemented at the state level in all 50 states. So again, 62% of Americans want a third party. Imagine if you had a business environment where 62% of customers wanted a new provider and there were only two providers. You would think, well, of course, you would start a third provider. But in this case, the two providers try and create an artificial monopoly for the two of them. And so we have to go around breaking that monopoly at the state level in 25 states by the end of 2023, and then hopefully all 50 states by 2024. Then you can run candidates, but we also want to support reform measures at the ballot box and support good candidates who are running as Democrats or Republicans in areas where we're not on the ballot yet.
So the Forward Party is not the very first third political party in the United States. We've seen, quite a few in the past. Why do you think the Forward Party may have the potential to capture more independent voters?
The last major effort in this direction was in 1992, Ross Perot, the Reform Party, 30 years ago. And over those 30 years, more and more Americans, millions of Americans, have gotten fed up with the two-party system and declared themselves independents. The times have changed, and the institutional trust, unfortunately, and this is a bad thing, has gone down and down. It's gotten weaker and weaker. So if you had a true alternative, most Americans desperately want it. They just keep being told, you can't have it, you can't have it. But the Forward Party already is the third biggest political party in the United States, just a year after launching. And so
how do you measure that when you say it's the biggest?
By financial resources, budget, but also we have chapters in all 50 states, state leads in 45 of those 50 states, and we're activating thousands of new Americans every day.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So what about the policy platforms that the Forward Party is running on? How is the third party approach different from, the two major parties?
Well, so the way the current system works is they try and divide you into left versus right and say, oh, it's their fault, when really no one in the system wants to do anything is the truth of it. And so no matter what point you pick on the spectrum, you're going to energize some people and then turn away others. So what we're doing is we have a values-based platform around free people, thriving communities, and a vibrant democracy. And we're leaving it to candidates in different parts of the country to say what they believe, but we're not going to dictate those beliefs from the national level, in large part because Democrats have completely given up on rural areas around the country. Republicans have completely given up on urban areas in the coast, and we want to help people everywhere.
The reason being they just don't think they can win those places. That's why they give up.
Well, 70% of the races around the country now in the United States are uncontested or uncompetitive. I live in New York City. Republicans don't have any meaningful
Mhm.
influence here. If I go to the countryside, Democrats have no meaningful influence. So the two parties have divided the country up into turf or pockets and said, you take that, I'll take this. And that's one reason why the polarization is getting so much worse, is that the two parties don't represent the same types of communities anymore, and they don't have to try and get along.
Well, we're gonna also talk about technology and entrepreneurship and businesses. That's kind of who you represent as well. So you've also talked a lot about social media in your book, actually, as a problem, even though in the beginning you kind of embraced it. How do you feel about social media today, especially with Elon Musk taking it over, and its impact in future elections?
We still embrace it because it's a tool to get your message out. But we don't have any illusions about the fact that social media is necessarily a good thing for democracy or the way people are getting their information. Negative emotion and misinformation actually spread 6 times more powerfully and quickly on Twitter and other platforms than facts or positivity. And if you spend time on a lot of these platforms, they're very, very negative, and they feed on that energy to increase engagement. So this problem is getting worse, not better, in America. And it was counterbalanced before by local publications and newspapers that have gone out of business. Now, even small towns who used to get their news about the high school football team, that has disappeared. So they're getting their information from cable news and social media. And they're also falling down these ideological rabbit holes where it's two warring tribes. And the reason why you're upset is because of this group over here or this group over here. Social media is an enormous part of that. And it actually enforces this ideology, because if you raise your hand and say something against it, then people will pile on and attack you.
Yeah, and do you think Elon Musk taking over Twitter is going to help alleviate this or make it worse?
Well, I think Elon is going to have a very different approach, and time will tell whether it's better or worse. He is enabling more of a free-for-all atmosphere on Twitter, which some people regard as a very bad thing. And the history shows that if you want to run an advertising business, they don't like free-for-alls. They want moderated content because they don't want their brand associated with something that's very inflammatory.
Okay, so now going to Asian American related questions. You also have spoken quite a bit, especially during the pandemic, about the anti-Asian hate, and you yourself as an Asian American with parents from Taiwan. How does the immigrant family experience shape who you are today? And how does being a Taiwanese immigrant son in particular influence your upbringing and maybe decisions later in life?
Well, the nearest decision is that I'm going back to Taiwan to visit my parents at the end of
Do
this
they
year.
live in Taiwan right now?
Yes, they do. So if you see someone who looks like me walking around Taiwan, it might actually be me. Because I'm heading back. I'm so proud of my parents. As a kid, I didn't realize just what they went through as immigrants to this country, trying to make a better life for me and my brother. But the fact that they went from relatively humble beginnings in Taiwan to the U.S. Inspired me to think bigger about what I could do in my lifetime, really, in one generation. And the fact that I ran for president of the United States and made 7 national debates and raised tens of millions of dollars from everyday Americans, the vast majority of whom were not Asian American, by the way.
Yes.
It is something that I'm very proud of. But that's only possible because of the example my parents set, and I love them dearly for it.
Yeah, but as you said, even though a lot of your supporters are not Asian Americans, I think Asian American community does, feel proud of you.
Well, I hope so. Thank you for saying so. I mean, they're very, very glad and
And
happy.
we've seen actually, in different election cycles, a lot of you've endorsed some Asian Americans across different parties, and candidates seek your endorsement as well. And how do you feel about this, anti-Asian hate? And what have you been talking about just in terms of this relatively new phenomenon because of COVID?
Asian Americans are the most underrepresented community in American elected office, bar none. And I'd love to help change that. I do endorse candidates at the local level of either party or anyone who's trying to do something good. And it makes me sad when they don't achieve their goals.
Mm-hmm.
I actually think that one thing that's suppressing Asian American political voice is the two-party system. Because if you have these two giant parties and Asian Americans are about 6% of the American population, we end up getting really diluted and diminished. And that if you had a different, more vibrant system, we'd have a much better chance of having our voice heard. But this is something that does drive me. I want to help change this in part because of the anti-Asian sentiment that has risen in the wake of COVID. My family has experienced things that we never had experienced before, and I'm sure that's true of Asian Americans around the country.
So what's next for the Forward Party for the next 2 years in particular?
We're supporting candidates who are running in 2023. Believe it or not, there are municipal elections. And then for 2024, we hope to be on the ballot in a majority of states and be backing candidates. There is a chance that there is an alternative to the two major parties in terms of the presidential race. If you do wind up with a Biden-Trump rematch, 58% of Americans are not excited about either of those. And so there are people who are working on an alternative, and there's a chance that the Forward Party ends up supporting that kind of push. So we're very, very excited. I'm going on a national tour in the US next year to help build the Forward Party's grassroots base. But everywhere I go, Americans come up to me and say, like, thank you for doing what you're doing. I hope you succeed because we need it.
Yeah, I think you've started a movement and are continuing that. Well, thank you so much for speaking to TVBS today. As someone who challenges entrenched political interests and institutions in the United States, you and the Forward Party have captured many independents, especially among the younger generation. While Taiwan also has two major political parties, there has also been a few smaller but critical parties that threaten the two-party dominance, giving independent voters an alternative that from time to time do sway election outcomes. So thank you for sharing your experience. And maybe when you visit Taiwan, you can also speak to our studio and also exchange some experience in terms of two-party system. So we wish you the best and take care.
Thank you. Happy holidays. See you all soon.
Thank you. Great. Thank you so much for doing this.